You guys left a bunch of great questions. Let's go ahead and dive into it. This first one kind of rudely worded, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it anyways. Salicata Game says, when will you guys stop glazing Jey Uso so hard? He's not a good worker, and I will die on this hill alone if I have to. I know your answer will be that the crowd loves him, and that's all I need to know, but it's not good enough for me to hear that I need to know why they love him. Sal wants to know why. Why do you love Jey Uso so much? He's simply a single catchphrase, and he can't string together a bunch of wrestling moves inside the wrestling ring. He's not a good worker. Well, listen, Sal. Sal, is that your name? Sal, that's your name. The crowd loves him because I've got the answer to this question. I know why the crowd loves him. I can pinpoint the exact reason why they love him, and it has nothing to do with the catchphrase yeet, although yeet is a bit of a symbol of where Jey Uso has come as a character. You might not like this answer. You might not like it. The reason why people love Jey Uso so much, the reason why I love Jey Uso so much is because he delivered the single greatest character performance in the history of professional wrestling. I defy you to find anybody in the history of televised professional wrestling. I can't speak for the 30s, 40s, 50s. For all I know, Hackenschmidt was an amazing character guy. I think he was a catch-as-catch-can guy. I think he was really good at that. But if you watch the Bloodline saga from going back to the pandemic days when him and Roman had that first initial feud, the trauma he experienced throughout all that, the trauma of dealing with Sami Zayn, a guy that he felt was an infiltrator, a pretender, infiltrating the family, him being under the thumb of Roman Reigns, the constant belittling, the constant disrespect Roman would show him. When he said to Jey and Jimmy, doesn't matter, when he says, hey, I'm Jimmy, not Jey. Does it really matter? Every single character beat from Jey Uso, with the exception of when he almost broke character from trying not to laugh at Sami Zayn, and even that was its own little mark of brilliance. Every story beat, every character beat, every arc that he went through, every moment of development that he went through led to the character that we see today. The crowd took that journey with Jey Uso, and now you think they respond just to the word yeet? Yeet, it's just a word. It's just a thing, but it's his thing, and it's his thing, and yeet basically means freedom. Ironically enough, because in a way, yeet does mean freedom, because when you eat something, you throw it off, right? Oh my God, there's another little bit of symbolism, because he was cast out from the bloodline too. He actually quit, but you know what I mean. The performance that Jey Uso put in was honestly Emmy worthy, because it's television. They do Emmys, not Oscars. It was brilliant. Every time he would be elevated and then something would happen, he would hear Roman's music or whatever, he would go down into the fetal position, like in a standing fetal position. Go back and watch his performance throughout those 3 years or whatever it is of the bloodline. Is he a subpar wrestler? I don't personally think so. I think he probably thrives, not shockingly, because for 13 years of his 14 years in WWE, he was, 12 years, he was a tag team guy. Does he thrive in tag team situations? Sure. Was his match against his brother at WrestleMania a little on the underwhelming side? Absolutely, for what they had really built up over those years. That being said, the crowd loves him because he made it through, because the trauma he experienced, being able to come out of that on the other side, a man with perseverance, a man who is celebrated because of that perseverance. I think his character story is one of the all-time great stories in WWE. That's why I love Jey Uso. That's why the people love Jey Uso, and that's why Jey Uso is so celebrated. That's why we all want to see him get that Intercontinental Championship off of Braun Breaker. We all want to see him get the World Championship. I really strongly advise that if you don't understand, you got to go back and you got to watch the story of Jey Uso to understand why people love him so much. It's not just because he comes out there and he has a cool catchphrase. It's that theme song, Just Me Us. This is one guy. After everything he went through, he came out of it alive. I love Jey Uso so much. All right, here's a tough one. King Chrysler says, how come people take Dave Meltzer's views on wrestling as gospel, but discredit Jim Cornette's, who's literally the living embodiment of professional wrestling? I would proffer this. I kind of take issue with the premise here. I don't take either man's views on professional wrestling as gospel. I don't know. I don't listen to Cornette's podcast, but a shit ton of people do. A ton of people listen to Jim Cornette's podcast. You see his face on t-shirts, on little like cardboard cutouts, his face all over, crowds everywhere. His podcast, like he has 2 podcasts that are constantly the top 2 rated wrestling podcasts on Chartable. Going in Raw, of course, coming in usually around anywhere between 15 and 22, which is still pretty damn good because we don't have a wrestler on our show. So I think that a lot of people do take. I would actually hazard a guess if it had to be polled, more people take Jim Cornette's views on wrestling as gospel than Dave Meltzer. That's my guess. That is absolutely my guess. So yeah, that's I think your premise is flawed. Why does anybody take their views on wrestling as gospel? I don't know. It's just because what they say aligns with those people's views. Meltzer likes that PWG New Japan type style stuff. And Jim Cornette is obviously more of an old school wrestling fan. I think my views would probably align more with what Jim Cornette has to say. It's just, in my opinion, a lot of what Jim Cornette says is just wrapped up in bullshit so often. Stuff that probably doesn't need to be there, but I think he realizes that that's a large part of what gets the views, the controversy, the controversial takes and whatnot. But no, whenever he's on like Dark Side of the Ring or whatever, I think he's a terrific voice. I really do. It's just, I've tried to listen to his podcast a couple times and I can't get past the personality that he presents there. So, take that for what you will. I respect both men's contributions to the industry. And I do think that Dave Meltzer has had contributions to the industry. 1000% I do. He wouldn't be around now at the age of whatever he is, if he didn't. Tyler Warden, 93, says, what should TNA's first big win be over WWE? Well, it's not going to be their main title. It's not going to be their women's title. Oh, man, I don't know. I'm trying to think like the biggest name in, what would be kind of interesting, given that Ethan Page has history with TNA. It'd be kind of interesting for him to join up with the North, or with Josh Alexander, to reform the North for a period of time and maybe get those tag titles, take him to TNA. I think that could be really interesting. I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be a really neat first big win over WWE. That'd be cool. Shane Canavan says, according to Wrestle purists, Triple H thinks Solo is kind of bad, but it doesn't matter because he's Bloodline. Whether true or not, what do you think of that? Are people being unfair with Solo? I think Solo, performance-wise, has actually been good. I don't think the lulls in the Bloodline story are on him. I think the writing's been not great. I find it curious that if you go back and you look at Solo in NXT, he did not talk the way he talks now with that sort of whisper. I think I understand what they're trying to do with him. Man, a few words, simmering, anger, power hungry, whatever it is. His bloodline is more like mercenaries, right? Like family connected mercenaries who are really out just to serve as Solo as opposed to any greater good. Roman Reigns, for all his faults as a character, understood that he represented the good of the WWE. He represented what was best for the WWE. If he succeeded in doing what he did, the rest of the WWE would be fed. And so at all costs, because nobody else could do what he did, and that's what he was out to prove. Both company and family would benefit from Roman Reigns. Solo's out. Solo wants it for Solo. That's it. He doesn't care about anybody else. I think one of the major faults of the way they've handled the bloodline, and I've mentioned this on the other show, I might have mentioned it here, the other show, Going in Raw, is there has been a lack of backstage segments with the bloodline that really give you a greater understanding of who they are, depth of character, the dynamics between the characters. And I think if we had more of that, there was that early on before they got rid of Heyman. Once they got rid of Heyman, that stuff stopped. And it was very disappointing to see that stop because that stuff was so integral to the bloodline storyline. It was like all the little details of their relationships really played out in those backstage segments in Roman Reigns' suite. And for us to be robbed of that now with the bloodline is really underscoring just how important that stuff was. And I think that's why the bloodline stuff has felt flat. I think that's one reason why it's felt flat. They also, action-wise, have been kind of redundant here and there. Solo gets no reactions these days, or not very strong reactions anyways. Nobody, I don't think in the crowd, like views him as like, oh, this guy's a real threat. Oh, you don't piss him off. And I think it's a shame because I think they could have established that with him. And they chose not to. I think they chose not to so as to not humanize this version of the bloodline. I think they want him seen as, I mean, that's why Tama Tonga makes those weird sounds. That's why they rarely talk. I think they want people to see them as kind of like, they don't want them humanized because then the crowd might start appreciating them. And I think that's a bad move. I think that probably was not the smartest thing in the world to do because now you just get a crew that Jacob gets a really great reaction, but nobody else does. Everybody wants to see Jacob and nobody really cares about Solo. Kyle Supremo says, should WWE have manufactured their own competition and made ECW and WCW separate brands while still owning them? It feels like so many wrestlers got lost to history with both companies folding. I think so. Like, I would highly suggest people check out the Guy Evans Nitro book, even just for the last couple chapters about once WWF had WCW and ECW, but mainly WCW, why they approached it the way they did. And it seemed to be a bigger deal about TV contracts than what they wanted to do creatively with it. Yes, the Booker T Buff Bagwell match didn't help things. But also, I think, obviously the talent that came over wasn't prime WCW talent. No Sting, no Goldberg, no Flair to start, no NWO to start. It was what was left of WCW. Now, if they took the people from WCW and added people who were with WCW, similar to what they did with the Invasion, but did stuff like, I don't know, instead of Kurt Angle, you put Chris Jericho on Team WCW because he was there before. If you plunk down the money to buy out Goldberg, give him a bunch more money than he was making from Turner and then bring him in, or Scott Steiner, or, even Hogan, Hall, and Nash, if you really, really put a ton of money into it, or just waited on it until those guys' contracts were up, I think, and did a proper Invasion angle, I think there probably would have been a lot more interest in a proper WCW brand. But I think that it had to do with TV contracts. I think, like, at best we would have gotten, like, WWE SmackDown would have been WCW SmackDown. But I don't even think they would have done that because SmackDown was such a big brand at the time, and it was on network. It was on UPN, but it was on network. I remember reading the book, and it said something along the lines of the only TV spot they could really get programming for, get like a time slot for on a decent cable channel, was like Saturday mornings at 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's going to watch that. So should they have manufactured? It's different now because there's all these streaming services. That's why I'm always half jokingly harping on the idea that WCW should come back as a Netflix show, and you unload some of the roster, so you get rid of some of the pressure there. But I mean, back then there just weren't options because it was just TV. That was it. It was just TV, and TV programming blocks were really hard to come by back then. Jonathan R. Marsh says, kayfabe and in real life, what finishing moves would you absolutely not want to take and why? In real life, a lot of them, but my number one would be like the Alabama Slam. That one looks nasty. In kayfabe, You probably don't want to take what's like the most devastating move that people have. Like people sell for the RKO. I would say probably, or is there a humiliation? Oh, well, both actually be the stink face. Be the stink face or the Bronco Buster. I don't want somebody's private areas in my face. Unless Josh Razowskis says, "Are you excited?" I'm sorry for butchering your name. Are you excited for Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness, or does the mess of booking ruin your ability to be excited that we're actually going to see the dream match again? Much like a lot of AEW, I've just come to realize that sometimes you just have to appreciate that you're getting the match. These two have a long history. I'm overwhelmingly excited for Nigel McGuinness to be able to come back and get a main event against Bryan Danielson. I have no doubt the match is going to happen. I haven't watched Dynamite yet tonight. But yeah, no, I'm excited for it. I don't really care about was it confusing as hell? Yeah, but I don't really give a shit about that. It's whatever it is. We're going to get the match. And I like Nigel McGuinness. So yeah, I'm cool with it. I'm excited for it. I think it'll be awesome. All right. Dylan Lang has this question. He's asked this question a million times in these threads. And sometimes I start to answer it and then I realize that I kind of just hiccup and I delete the thing. I edit it out. So I'll finally answer it because you've been asking a lot, Dylan. He says, do you think there's a disconnect between the IWC and the common wrestling fan base in terms of wrestler popularity? Anytime I go to live events, the wrestlers we, the IWC, dislike or think are boring, tend to have the most love or signs in the crowd. Jey Uso, Akira Tozawa. I'll be honest with you, Dylan. I follow the IWC to a degree, but I have muted and blocked so many different names in the internet wrestling community that I don't know if I'm all that well plugged in. I didn't know that people thought Jey Uso was boring. I saw a lot of love for him, and I've seen a lot of hate for him. It's kind of weird. As far as Akira Tozawa is concerned, I didn't know people thought he was boring. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a really great wrestler. Do I think there's a disconnect between the two? Shit, man, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think that there's... The crowds pop for who they pop for. And the IWC traditionally has wanted to take a counter view. And I'm lumping a lot of people in with that group. But if we're talking about sort of those really loud Twitter accounts where they don't post a picture of their name or of their face, they post a picture of some wrestling meme. They're not represented. I don't think they're representative of even close to the majority of wrestling fans. I really don't. I guess the answer is I don't. Well, when you say we, the IWC, like just internet fans, I don't know. I mean, you like what you like. I don't know that there's that much of a disconnect because people see, this is why I have a hard time with this question, because I just don't know who the IWC is. Bunch of contrarians? Is that what it is? Bunch of negative people? Like, I don't get why people slam AEW like for the stupidest shit. You know, it's so dumb sometimes. Or they'll like, you see people like being all, I don't know. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. Like, if you're going to criticize something, criticize like valid storyline based points. And when you're going to criticize that, criticize the creative minds behind it, not the wrestlers doing the stuff. I said there was one account that like showed, oh, AEW is just full of botches, and it was like regular wrestling moves. It doesn't have any credibility to me. Those accounts anyways. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's a consensus. I really don't. So anyways, on that terrible non-answer, we're going to call it a day. Hey, listen, everybody, I'm doing kind of a new thing. I want to do some more like React type stuff to fun stuff online, but I need your help. I started a Reddit. It's called Reddit Juice, r/Reddit Juice. And it's W. I'll just put the thing here. And so I need you guys to post stuff there so that I can then react to it. Keep in mind, like, for example, a great example. Remember a couple of weeks ago, somebody leaked out a picture that was taken at a Raw production meeting, and you could see all the people in feuds near each other, so they're planning stuff out. That's the kind of stuff that I find interesting. You got to be careful with the videos, because there's the copyright issue here on YouTube. And if I do a video or I'm reacting to a video and it gets copyright claimed, which you never know what is or isn't going to get copyright claimed. If it's like, hey, can you react to Vince McMahon blowing out his quads at the Royal Rumble 2005? No, I probably can't, because if I post more than 3 seconds of that video, it's going to get claimed by the WWE, and there goes my revenue. So, but weird wrestling things. I want to react to weird wrestling things. Or somebody posted up a montage of a bunch of WWE 2K video game covers and asked, hey, which one is your favorite? That's a great thing to react to. It's like a question, but in visual form. So that kind of stuff as well. So head over to r/Reddit Juice, W Reddit Juice. Get it? And post some stuff up over there. Anyways, that's going to do it. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the other thing, notify bell. Hit that thumbs up if you like this video. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.